Hello, and welcome to the Horseshoe Crab Survey training video for Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary. In order to hit the beaches as part of our survey teams, you will also need to attend our annual Horseshoe Crab Survey training. The training typically takes place in early spring, April and/or May. Contact us and visit our Horseshoe Crab webpage to learn more. First, why are we surveying horseshoe crabs? The Atlantic horseshoe crabs here on Cape Cod are scientifically named Limulus polyphemus. They're living fossils dating back more than 400 million years old and predating the dinosaurs. Their populations have declined because in the past they were thought of as a pest, and now they are used for bait and also for their blood. For more information about the horseshoe crab, including their past on Cape Cod and their fascinating anatomy, check out the programs and horseshoe crab display here at the sanctuary.
Hello, I'm Mark Faherty. I'm the science coordinator here at Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary, and one of the projects I oversee here is our long-term research on horseshoe crabs. And the main part of our work on horseshoe crabs is doing spawning surveys where we use volunteers like you to count breeding females on the spawning beaches in May and June. And this is something we've been doing since at least 1999. And this data is really important because we use it to advocate for better management of horseshoe crabs with the state.
We use a citizen science approach, relying on volunteers as an integral part of our research team to complete all of the surveys day and night. Our surveys begin mid-April and occur on 2 days before and 2 days after the full and new moons in April, May, and June. All surveys are done at high tide, and the tide times vary between sites. Before your survey, someone on your survey team will need to pick up the site-labeled survey pack and the set of quadrat poles from the sanctuary. The quadrat poles are 3 PVC poles connected by 5-meter lengths of rope. They mark out the 25-meter square quadrat. Before leaving, double-check to make sure your pack contains everything you need.
The Division of Marine Fisheries oversees the horseshoe crab fishery, and we submit our data to them. And it's very important that we follow these established protocols and that you follow these protocols so that our data is usable and defensible when we make the case for better management of horseshoe crabs with the Division of Marine Fisheries.
On the day of the survey, you will meet all of your team members in the parking lot and walk out to the survey beach together. Inside your survey pack, you should have a site page detailing any important information you may need to survey at this site, including typical start and stop points, a copy of the horseshoe crab spawning season protocols, which you will want to follow during every survey. It contains the answers to most of your questions, and a tide chart for the season with your site highlighted. It will also contain your data sheets, including spawning survey cover sheet, quadrat sheets, and tagged horseshoe crab resite data sheets. They're now located on the back side of the cover sheet. The survey pack will also contain a thermometer, pencils, a clipboard, and a rubber band to put around the clipboard when it's windy so that the pages stay. You will want to bring water with you, both for you to drink if it's a hot day and to rinse the thermometer with after you're done. Now, let's go more in depth about the survey procedures and the different data sheets. Once you get to the beach, you will start by looking at your spawning survey cover sheet, which will be pre-filled out under the survey start location. We filled this out for you in advance, using a coin flip to randomly assign which side of the beach you start on. The cover sheet will either say north/east or south/west. For example, if your cover sheet says north/east, you pick the appropriate end for your beach. If you were on a north-south orientation beach, you would start at the north, and if you were on an east-west orientation beach, you would start at the east. If you are new to a site, don't worry. We always have at least one person each survey who has previously surveyed at that site and can show new surveyors how to survey along that beach and where the start and end points are. The site page in the survey pack can also help with this. Once you get to the assigned end of the beach, you will write down the date and the survey beach at the top of the page and record the time under arrival at site. You will then record the time of high tide, which is the projected time that was in the survey reminder email sent 2 days before, and the same time should also be on the tide chart in the survey pack. You should always arrive at the site at least 10 minutes before the time of projected high tide. Once the water begins to ebb, you have reached the actual high tide, and you will record that time under survey start. So just to go over this, the easiest way to keep an eye on the water level is to put a stick in the sand at the high tide line. If the water flows up higher than that stick, you will move the stick up the beach to the new high tide line. Continue to do this until water no longer touches the stick, and that is how you know that the water level is receding or ebbing, and that is when you start your survey and record that time under survey start. Now, this may sound confusing. So, say that 1:30 p.m. is the projected high tide time at your site. You and your survey team arrive at the north end of the beach at 1:15 p.m. and are currently watching a stick in the sand for water height. As you watch this, you can begin filling out the rest of the spawning beach cover sheet. Record the first and last names of all surveyors. If surveyors are past horseshoe crab volunteers for Wellfleet Bay, they do not need to write their phone number or email. If a surveyor is new, or if information has changed, please write their email and cell phone number so that we can reach them for any weather-related cancellations. Next, begin filling out the environmental conditions. Assess cloud cover, which can be clear, partly cloudy, or overcast. Assess natural light, which can be dawn, full sun, part sun, dusk, moonlight, or full dark. Natural light is based on the time of day and not the amount of cloud cover. I know that's confusing. For example, at 1:30 p.m. on a partly cloudy day, the natural light would still be full sun. Measuring air temperature happens by taking the thermometer out of the bag and letting it hang in the air for a few minutes. Record the air temperature in Celsius. All of the thermometers read Celsius. Next, take the water temperature by bringing the thermometer into the water and holding it there so that it is fully submerged in the water and not hitting the sand. Hold it in the water for a few minutes. Record the water temperature in Celsius as well. After taking the temp, rinse the thermometer with fresh water from a water bottle. Next, measure the wind speed and direction. For this, we do not have measurement tools you can use, but recommend FishWeather, which is an app you can use on your smartphone that may locate local stations here on Cape Cod. Assess precipitation. Precipitation can be none, fog, light rain, heavy rain, or sleet. And also assess wave height. You're doing this on the waves that are close to shore as either less than 6 inches, 6 to 12 inches, or greater than 12 inches. After you've filled out the environmental conditions, continue to watch the stick until the water level is receding and the tide is ebbing. So let's say this happens at 1:32 p.m. You would record this time under survey start. Now it's time to begin your survey. Have one member of the team step out the amount of meters pre-filled out under random starting location. Again, this will be filled out ahead of time by the staff here at Audubon using a random number table. Your random number will be a number of meters between 1 and 9. For example, if the random starting location says 7, one team member will take 7 large steps along the high tide line. Then, you will put the first quadrat pole in the sand and start the first quadrat. The 3 poles of the quadrat, with 2 5-meter lines of rope between them, will form 2 sides of a 25-meter square. One end pole and the middle pole should be placed along the water line, with the rope pulled taut between them. The other end pole should be out into the water and pulled taut so that the 2 lines of rope form a right angle. Whoever is holding that pole 5 meters into the water will be standing in the water and therefore will be getting wet. One person always has to be in the water holding that deeper pole for measurement and also looking for horseshoe crabs. It's very hard to gauge just by looking into the water how far 5 meters is. After you have your first quadrat laid out, all surveyors will be looking in that quadrat square, quadrat 1, and you will count and record any horseshoe crabs you see. You will use the quadrat data sheets to record your findings in each quadrat. To begin, label the top of the quadrat data sheet with the site, date, and time of your survey. When counting adult horseshoe crabs, you must identify the crabs as either male or female. On average, female horseshoe crabs are 30% larger than males. Also, during spawning season, female horseshoe crabs will typically and very obviously have at least one male attached to them. You can always pick up a single horseshoe crab by the sides of its carapace, or its shell, to check for gender. Males will have a set of boxing gloves as their first set of legs, whereas females will have a forked first set that looks the same as the rest of their legs. You will count males and females both inside and outside of the 25-meter quadrat. Inside of the quadrats, you will also count clusters. A cluster is when males are attached to females. The males use their boxing gloves to grab hold of a female on the back of her carapace, and they will stay attached as she moves around. The smallest cluster is called a pair, and that is when one male is attached to one female. However, clusters are not just one-to-one, but can also be 2 males to 1 female, 3 males to 1 female, etc. Because of this, when you are recording clusters, you always need to write exactly how many males and how many females are in the cluster. To do this, we will use the notation of 1M, 1F, 2M, 1F, 3M, 1F, etc. Outside horseshoe crabs are any horseshoe crabs deeper than the quadrat that you see when standing at the quadrat pole that is in the water. So essentially, when you're standing 5 meters from the high tide line in the water, how many horseshoe crabs you see beyond that point. It's just with your eyes, you don't have to go any deeper. For outside horseshoe crabs, you must record the total number of outside males and outside females, but you do not need to record pairs or clusters. An important note is if you ever see a large single horseshoe crab inside or outside of the quadrat, check to make sure it is a male and not a single female. Single females are very rare at our survey sites, and they're very rare in Cape Cod in general. And once you've counted one quadrat successfully and you want to move, you will move in a pivot-like fashion. The person who is holding the quadrat pole farthest down the beach will keep their pole in the sand, and the others will pivot. So if the farthest pole is along one end, the middle pole and the 5-meter deep poles will rotate around that first pole and set up again, so that the middle pole is still parallel to the shore and on the high tide line, and that the pole in the water forms a right angle with the other two. The next pivot, quadrat 3, would be just that one side pole, and that would pivot around the middle and deep water poles. And then the next pivot, quadrat 4, would be the middle pole and the deep water pole again. When you move quadrats, the surveyors holding the poles will also keep track of the horseshoe crabs as you move to the next quadrat, because, of course, the horseshoe crabs are moving as well. Some may be moving in pairs, some lone males will be moving around quickly, and some females may be actively nesting. You never want to double count horseshoe crabs during the survey, and surveyors must be constantly on the watch and communicating with each other about moving horseshoe crabs.
In addition to the spawning surveys, another important aspect of our research is the mark recapture work that we do using these U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service button tags. And so a certain number of crabs will have these tags on them on the left side. And so it's important to look for these while you're doing spawning surveys and to carefully note the number on it and record that on the data sheet. The button tagging gives us information on how the crabs are moving around the harbor and how long they live and how often they're spawning. Isn't that right?
In your pack, you have tagged horseshoe crab recite data sheets that are now located on the back side of the cover sheet. If you find a horseshoe crab with a button tag, record the tag number. Have the recorder read the number back to you to ensure it's written down correctly. Follow the data sheet to record where you found the horseshoe crab. Record this in coordinates, which you can use a smartphone to find. Note if the horseshoe crab is dead or alive. If dead, you can remove the button tag and turn it in with the data sheet. Feel free to note any other interesting comments about the tagged horseshoe crab. To learn more about button tagging and how to be involved in the Wellfleet Bay button tagging process, ask your horseshoe crab coordinator for more information. We also have special public programs at Wellfleet Bay where a member of staff will actually take you out, teach you how to button tag, and teach you all about why it's important. There are also experienced volunteers tagging horseshoe crabs after their surveys, and always ways to get involved here on Cape Cod. Once you count along the beach, you will get to the end of your survey beach section and your last quadrat. On your last quadrat, you may still see horseshoe crabs further down the beach. If so, you can make a note of that in the comments. However, you only need to record the standard outside horseshoe crabs in your last quadrat, and you do not have to feel the need to record all of the horseshoe crabs down the beach as outside horseshoe crabs. Fill out the page numbers on your quadrat forms as well, because that will really help when we're looking at things later. When you finish your last quadrat, there are two very important things you need to remember. You need to record the end time on the survey cover sheet. This is huge because it tells us the amount of time that your survey took you and is crucial for our data. People often forget this one just because it's at the very end. Also, record the number of quadrats you surveyed in the bottom corner of the cover sheet. This is important because it gives us the exact length of the beach you surveyed, as each quadrat is 5 meters long. And then double check the rest of the cover sheet and the quadrat sheets to make sure they're all complete. If something looks off or if you want to make any notes, please feel free to do that on the sheets. More data is always welcome. After your survey is complete, you will make sure that the survey pack and quadrat polls go to someone on your team who will either be at the next survey, or if nobody on your team is doing the next survey, then you can drop them off at Wellfleet Bay. After each survey, one member of your team must return the survey sheets into the Horseshoe Crab Coordinator's mailbox. You should also check your pack to make sure it's not low on any survey cover sheets or quadrat sheets or anything else you need, as you can pick those up at the sanctuary while you're there. And those should always be readily accessible for our surveyors. If you enjoyed this video and you want to participate in horseshoe crab surveys but haven't yet, you will also need to attend volunteer training and site sign-up, which all of our volunteers attend every year. After site sign-up, you'll receive emails confirming your survey times for the season, and then 1 to 2 days prior to each survey, you will receive an email from the Horseshoe Crab Coordinator containing directions to your survey site, the time to be at your site, the projected high tide time, your survey team members, and any other pertinent information. So it'll all be there in an email, really easy layout, and then you can just hit the beaches and start surveying. If you have any questions before, during, or after your survey, you should always call the Horseshoe Crab Coordinator, who can help you get your questions answered. For even more information about the horseshoe crab surveys and horseshoe crabs in general, check out our horseshoe crab page at www.massaudubon.org and our horseshoe crab exhibit and programs at Mass Audubon's Wellfleet Bay Wildlife Sanctuary. As always, we have an amazing staff and amazing researchers here that can always be of use if you have any questions about this program, and Mark Faherty, our science coordinator, is always there to help. Now that you know a lot of the basics of the survey, it's time to learn how to record on the quadrat sheet. Each person on the survey team needs to feel confident recording the data. This goes directly into the statewide database, so it should be neat and follow the typical recording format. To do this, we will now have a quick quadrat practice. These 4 bird's eye views will act as 4 quadrats of the survey. Try to record each quadrat for yourself, pausing the video if need be. Don't be discouraged if you don't get all 4 right. You can always rewind this part of the video and try again. For the purpose of this video, since we can't physically check the horseshoe crabs to see if they're male or female, you will assume that all single horseshoe crabs are male. So for these 4 quadrat practices, all single horseshoe crabs are male. So for quadrat 1, we had 1 pair, so that's 1M, 1F, and that was inside of the quadrat, and we also had 1 single male inside of the quadrat. There is also 1 outside male. Now for quadrat 2, there were more horseshoe crabs. So again, if you're doing things like this, don't get overwhelmed, just count, right? So we have 2 pairs inside of the quadrat. So each pair is 1M, 1F, and then you would put those in a parenthesis because there are 2 of them. There are also 2 single males inside of the quadrat. And outside of the quadrat, we have 1 pair, and we also have 1 single male. So that is recorded as 2 outside males and 1 outside female. Now for quadrat number 3, we have a bigger cluster. So again, we're just going to count. we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 males to 1 female. So we will record that as a cluster inside the quadrat. And we also have 1 single male. And then outside of the quadrat, we have 3 single males. So that will just be 3 males outside. Quadrat number 4 has a lot of horseshoe crabs. So again, we're just going to count. So inside of the quadrat, we have 1 pair of 1 male and 1 female, and 1 cluster of 2 males and 1 female. We also have 2 single males. Those are all inside of the quadrat. And then outside of the quadrat, we have a larger cluster. So that has 1, 2, 3, 4 males to 1 female. And we also have a pair of 1 male and 1 female. And we have 1 single male. So altogether for outside of the quadrat, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 males outside and 2 females outside. So again, go back and look if that seems a bit confusing, but that's the typical way that we are recording all of these horseshoe crabs, and you really want to get used to recording them that way because that's the way that the data goes to the state, and that's how we are really able to know what's going on every year. At the start of the season, you may feel very prepared, and when there aren't that many horseshoe crabs, it seems really easy to count them. However, as the season progresses, at some sites, and as more horseshoe crabs come to your site, recording can get much more challenging. So just remember that you can always come back to this video and just go through those 4 practice quadrats at any time, as well as just watching the whole video through to make sure that you feel confident with the procedures when you get out there. If you are not seeing any horseshoe crabs in any of the quadrats, you'll just put a circle with a line through it in that quadrat space to denote that the quadrat had nothing. If many quadrats are looking like that, you can also make a note and use tally marks instead in the quadrat page. You can also write that in the comments. Just remember that when you're doing this, we always need to know the total amount of quadrats you surveyed. So that's really important. How many quadrats you surveyed from start to finish. And because we're using measurements, if you do see horseshoe crabs, only if you saw 2 per beach, say at the start of the spring, we want to know what quadrat that was in. So that's why you still need to measure out the entire beach, because seeing horseshoe crabs in quadrat 2 versus quadrat 30, that's a different end of the beach, and that's important to know.